All right, talk about this supposed recent rumor that someone in Tyson Fury's camp has come out and said to Dan Raphael that they are having second thoughts about going through with this Wilder fight, and they're considering pulling out of this or not even going through with this Deontay Wilder fight. Someone in the management team. And this was supposedly revealed on Dan Raphael's chat that he has weekly, the Fight Freaks or whatever the hell it's called. So, and this was revealed through an article, basically on The Sun. It wasn't even an article written by Dan Raphael posted on ESPN's website, their boxing website. This was supposedly, I'm assuming someone was in the chat and they may have revealed information, or they could have been affiliated with this website or whatever, but somehow, some way, the information in this chat was revealed to this website, and they went ahead and wrote a story about it. Let me give my thoughts on this whole thing, because people are saying, well, if Dan Raphael says it, then it's got to be true. Dan Raphael has been notorious for putting things out in the media and not really making a story about it, but he'll make a comment on Twitter, or again, maybe in a chat, the chat room forum or something like that, or a chat room that he has himself, that he hosts himself, and he'll make a comment and he'll kind of leave it open-ended, like basically, I heard this from someone in the camp or someone close to the fighter, but he'll never reveal the name, and he'll kind of leave it open-ended where it's like, this could be true or it can't be true. So, for instance, I ran with a supposed rumor from Dan Raphael, and it ended up being wrong. And Jason knows this, Jason Shaw, who's a regular listener on the show, and I had to actually apologize to him, and because I sat there and I said the same thing. Well, if Dan Raphael says it, it's got to be true. Well, Dan Raphael obviously does have the inside track, and he does get a lot of information because he is in the know, and he definitely has access that a lot of people don't have access, and a lot of contacts he has that a lot of people don't have contacts because of his affiliation with ESPN and the nature of his job. I understand that. But he sometimes just goes out and says things without really confirming them. And I'm not saying he confirmed this, but it's just a rumor. Because getting back to what I was saying about what I said to Jason, I got an argument with Jason Shaw, who is a regular listener on the Ringside Reporter podcast that we have every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. He said that Errol Spence, someone in the Errol Spence camp and in Errol Spence's team, he said that Errol Spence was rumored to be getting $3 million for the Lamont Peterson fight, which turned out to be totally false. It turned out to be totally false. So that was something that he put out there, and I think that was on Twitter. He may have said it, or I think it was on Twitter that he said that. But again, if Dan Raphael is not writing a story about it, and he's not putting it on the official ESPN website, then how credible or how important is the story? So, only one website put out this story. They found it newsworthy to put out a story about something that was said in a chat room by someone in the Tyson Fury camp. Tyson Fury didn't say it. Tyson Fury's father didn't say it. His promoter didn't say it. His trainer didn't say it. And again, I have an old rule of thumb that I like to use. If I can only get one source on something, then I'm not really confident about how true it is. I may say I heard this from such and such, but I'm not going to sit there and bank on it until I can get at least 2 or 3 sources that can corroborate the same story. So that's the thing. So Dan Raphael has put out information out there, whether it not be significant or it could be deemed as being insignificant, really. I mean, is Errol Spence's purse really that is a significant story? But he did put it out there that he was getting $3 million from Lamont Peterson, and that turned out to be false because the purse that was released by that was given to the commission was only $1 million. I shouldn't say only, but it was $1 million. It wasn't the $3 million. And let's look at Tyson Fury. So all of a sudden, Tyson Fury has this reputation for pulling out of fights. But let me ask you this. Can anyone really name me one championship high-profile fight that Tyson Fury has ever pulled out of outside of the Klitschko fight? Does this guy really have a history of pulling out of fights? Or at least big, high-profile, significant fights? To my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, the only high-profile fight that he's ever pulled out of was the Klitschko fight. So now all of a sudden, this guy gets a reputation for pulling out of fights? Really? If I can recall, Derek Chisora pulled out against him. Vladimir Klitschko pulled out against Tyson Fury. And so did David Haye, pulled out twice. And, you know, Eddie Hearn's funny because he says, oh, well, I don't think Tyson Fury is going to go through the fight. But meanwhile, when Tony Bellew was signed to fight David Haye, a guy who was notorious for pulling out of fights, he seemed very confident about David Haye going through with the fight. So why all of a sudden we put this negative connotation on Tyson Fury when it comes to pulling out of fights? I don't think that he has earned that reputation for being a guy who's notorious for pulling out of big money fights, championship fights. The only one I can recall is the Tyson Fury fight. Excuse me, the Vladimir Klitschko fight. That's the only fight I can recall him pulling out of. And if anyone else can give me any information to refute that, then you know what, I'll gladly retract my statement. These videos in my car, the car gets so hot and sometimes the video cuts out. But I'm just going to end it on this. I'm not convinced that this fight is not going to happen. I'm pretty confident it will. Whether I'm right or not, that remains to be seen. But just because of a quote that was, or a statement that was made in a chat room by an unrevealed source, that the person who made the quote, who was actually a writer, did not feel compelled to put it in a story and post it in an article on ESPN. If he didn't do that, then you have to wonder how big is the story. And Tyson Fury was just announced. An article was just released that he announced that he was having a baby, another baby with his wife. It was released on the Mirror, and in that article he said, "Daddy's going to bring home the WBC title. You know, and I'm going to bring the title home," he said in that same article that was released an hour ago. So Deontay Wilder is pretty happy about it. Yeah, I guess he pulled out of the Ustinov fight, but again, was that a real high-profile, significant fight? And again, can we cut him some slack? Because I think in that fight, I heard there was a death in the family. So, you know, that's understandable. But again, it wasn't for a title, and it wasn't a big, high-profile fight. Nowhere near on the magnitude of Deontay Wilder fight for the title. Whereas Klitschko pulled out of the title fight with him. Derek Chisora, and you know, he's a high-profile fighter. So I think we can cut him some slack for the Ustinov fight, because I think his dad or his uncle was ill. I can't remember, one of the two. But that, again, like I said, I'm not trying to minimize it, but it wasn't really did anyone really care that he pulled out of that fight? It's not like, was that fight a highly anticipated fight? Was that a big, significant, high-profile championship fight? All of the big fights that he's been in, Chisora, I should say, Haye, Klitschko, all the big names, those guys pulled out against him. It wasn't the other way around. So that's what I'm saying. Like, what evidence do we have outside of the most recent incident that he pulled out with Klitschko for the rematch? What constitutes him having a history for pulling out of fights? That's all I want to know. And then Eddie Hearn saying, well, you know, he had a plan to have the 4 comeback fights. That's what he told me. Okay, well, Anthony Joshua had a plan too. He said, give me $50 million and I'll fight Wilder. And he reneged on that. So, you know, what are you talking about, Eddie? You know, you're basically, this is the thing about Hearn too. And again, I'm not going to make this about Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua, but, you know, every time there's a situation where someone else is getting shine instead of Eddie Hearn, like the $50 million, for instance, that took some of the shine away from, you know, Eddie Hearn. It you know, gave credibility to Wilder. He basically stole the headline from Eddie Hearn by putting the $50 million out there. So what does Eddie Hearn do? Oh, the $50 million isn't real. Same thing. He loses the purse bid to Pulev with Dillian White, whatever. I think it was Pulev, if I'm not mistaken. He loses that purse bid. Oh, well, they don't have the money. Oh, so that now a big fight. Oh shit! A big fight gets announced with Fury, oh, that's not going to happen. So like every time someone's doing something big that, you know, can compete with something he's doing, automatically he discredits it by saying it's not real, it's not going to happen, they don't have the money. So that's the thing, you know, that people are taking Eddie Hearn's statement, a lot of these Eddie Hearn sycophants out there, and they're riding with Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn puts out these false narratives. Again, Fury does not have a history of pulling out of fights. He just doesn't. He just doesn't. So that's all I got, man. Leave your comments. Do you think this fight's going to happen? Should we put much credence into this little comment that was made in a chat, especially since an article came out today, which Fury said that, you know, I'm bringing the title home to my newborn baby when I have my newborn baby, which was a story that came out an hour ago. And Deontay Wilder was out there saying he's confident and he feels that the fight's going to happen and no one told him otherwise. So, I mean, are we going to run with this little, you know, statement in the chat, or are we going to listen to someone of significance, meaning one of the fighters or one of the fighters' trainers or one of the fighters' promoters? Are we going to listen to those types of sources, or are we going to listen to Dan Raphael, who's just making a secondhand speculative statement, just like he made statements before in the chat and on Twitter that weren't true? So that's all I got for now, man. We're going to talk about this more on the Ringside Reporter podcast today at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure you tune into that. And until then, Beaver's out. Talk to y'all soon. Peace. Have a great day.